have a cat on my hand. Okay. So as always, I'm going to give folks a minute or two to come on in while I get my chat set up. Ow! Yes, you're very, very cute. Ow! That's not very nice. That's not very nice. Good morning, Isabella. Hey, I'm working. I need that. I'm just still giving folks a minute or two to find the stream. Ow, ow. I'm kind of really hoping she goes away, actually. Okay, nope. That is enough biting. You can go away now. Now she's going to go away. I'm just going to take care of this. Say hi, Naomi. Hi. Say bye, Naomi. Bye. So cute. Alright. Now that the tiny demon kitten is taken care of, let's get started. We left off talking about the Nevada State Legislature. Talked about how, in the main, for the most part, the legislature is very similar to the Congress and the federal government. It's bicameral. We have a lower house and an upper house. Unlike the U.S. Senate, both houses are apportioned on population because of a Supreme Court decision back in the 60s. The ways in which the legislature is unlike the federal government, as I said, are mainly listed about right here. No restrictions on bill topics, which means either house can introduce a bill on any topic, unlike the U.S. Congress, where revenue bills do have to originate in the House. Morning, Kimberly. And I mentioned before, a majority of the full body is needed to approve things rather than just a majority of those present. Just so that Carson City didn't go sneaky making laws with Reno while Las Vegas was hanging out at home. As I said, there's a 2/3 vote for tax increases, which does not exist at the federal level, but does exist in many states, including California. And also, at least our last legislature was very heavily Democratic, right? So the people who are currently holding the office, although the office isn't worth much anymore given that the legislature's out of session, are overwhelmingly, almost 2/3 in both houses, Democrats. I've said this before, but I'm pretty sure Nevada is a blue state these days. The Republicans just don't want to admit it. And that is further reinforced by a quick glance at Nevada's statewide executive. Those positions are these fine folks. We have 5 out of 6 of whom are Democrats. Governor Steve Sisolak of stay-at-home order fame. Kate Marshall, who's our lieutenant governor. Barbara Sagowski, she's the lone Republican. She's our Secretary of State. We have State Treasurer Zach Koenig, State Controller Catherine Byrne, and Attorney General Aaron Ford. let's talk about those folks. Well, like the U.S. president, the governor of Nevada and the governor of most U.S. states is a complex and multifaceted role. Um, so the governor acts obviously as the chief executive of the state, uh, having, as we've all noticed recently, a relatively broad emergency powers, as many governors do. So, yes, he can order everyone to shut down the schools and wear masks when they go to the grocery store and things like that, which you should do anyway, whether or not the governor orders it. But yeah, he does have that power, right? So the governor is a broadly powerful position in the state government. One particular way in which the governor of Nevada is relatively powerful, especially compared to the United States president, is in terms of the power of appointment. Sorry, I'm just realizing I don't have my lecture notes. I got everything else together. I even called up websites and I was like, yeah, well, I don't have my notes. I forget that I did write a lot of good information here. Where's my... There we go. So, the executive. One of the ways in which the executive is unusually powerful in Nevada is in terms of the appointment process. So when the governor of Nevada appoints people to head, various departments of the government, the governor of Nevada has sole discretion over who it is that they appoint to those positions. Unlike in the federal government, where the appointments to the cabinet and other high-level positions around the government require senatorial confirmation. So the governor is in that way kind of more powerful than the president within that particular system of government. But that power is tempered by the fact that we have a plural executive in Nevada. As I mentioned, all 6 of these fine folks are elected. And so accordingly, the governor doesn't get to appoint those people, right? The governor does not get to appoint elected positions. So let's also take a moment and think back to the lecture on the cabinet. We talked about how not all cabinet officials are created equal, right? How some cabinet officials are, let's be honest, more important than others, and how the inner cabinet represented the 4 departments that were actually represented in the Washington administration: state, defense, treasury, and justice. Well, in terms of defense, Nevada, that is very much up to the discretion of the governor. The governor is commander-in-chief of the Nevada National Guard, so can call out the guard to assist in emergencies and things like that. And theoretically, if there was some sort of invasion of our fair silver state, could theoretically operate the guard in defense of the nation, although probably in that circumstance the response would be federalized, because we federalize our response to things that you can shoot and bomb, but you're not to things that you need to resolve through, like, ventilators and masks. Never mind. So furthermore, the power of the executive over the legislature is somewhat tempered by the fact that, according to the Constitution, the legislature explicitly has the power to override regulations passed by the executive branch. So even if the governor appoints somebody that supports their ideology and issues regulations in accordance with that ideology, the legislature can still say, we don't really like those regulations, so we're going to override them and substitute our own. Excuse me. So Governor also serves as in a symbolic role as chief of state, right? So when there are awards and ceremonies and things like that to be attended on behalf of the state of Nevada, the governor does do a lot of those things. Like I'm sure he throws out the first pitch for the baseball game somewhere here in the state. And you'd expect that sort of ceremonial role of, like, receiving other states' governors and having that sort of like diplomatic prestige in the same way that the president does. That is also a task of the governor of most states. And so states, like the federal government, and unlike most of our peer nations abroad, do not separate the role of head of state and head of government. One person has to try and balance them all. Or in the case of our current president, not try at all and just, kind of ignore the whole diplomacy thing. Excuse me. The governor has a role to play in the legislature in Nevada. Like in the federal government, the governor does not have the right to introduce any legislation, but he does have a lot of influence over a legislation and how it works its way through the legislature. One of the biggest ways in which he has that influence is the State of the State Address, which, like the State of the Union, is a big, huge event in Nevada politics, and everybody who's anybody shows up, and the governor is required to address the legislature as to the state of the state, and hey, how's everything going? As with the president, governors typically use this address to set out their legislative proposals. Say, hey, this is a new legislative session opening up, and what I'd like to see happen in this legislative session is blah da 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 da, and that sets the agenda for much of the very short legislative session. Remember, it's only 4 months long. So right at the beginning of it, the governor gets to go out there, have this big speech. It's a big media event, and it does drive a lot of the agenda that is on the calendar at the Nevada legislature. Governor also originates budget requests. So all of the various departments of the Nevada state government, from the Department of Health and Human Services to the Department of Workforce Training and Rehabilitation, to the Department of Transportation, to the Nevada System of Higher Education, and so on and so forth, all the agencies of the state government. The governor originates budget requests for all of those things, which, by the way, the governor has asked NSHE to prepare for an up to a 14% budget cut in the coming fiscal year, because I don't know if you all noticed, but the big money vacuum that sucks money out of tourist pockets and delivers them into the coffers of Clark County in the state of Nevada, it's been shut off for like 2 months now. So expect budget cuts. Expect budget cuts in everything coming. Like this is going to be ugly, folks. So the governor has, like the president, the power of the veto. Law is passed out of the legislature, and as at the federal level, goes to the governor's desk. The governor can sign it or can veto it. Also, similar to the federal level, but unlike some other states, the governor does not have a line item veto. Governor of Nevada can choose to accept a law in its entirety, or to veto a law in its entirety. You can't pick and choose just exactly what you want from among what's passed by the legislature. You take it in full, or you don't. That is, as I said, the same as the federal government, but different from many states across the country, where the governor does have a line item veto, meaning that the governor can actually literally go through with a pen and strike a line out of a bill, right? The California governor can do that on budget matters. It's like, oh, I'm looking through the budget. I don't like that expenditure. Bwah, takes it off. Nevada, you cannot do that. No line item veto. It also should be noted that the governor of Nevada is overridden in their vetoes unusually often, and way more often than, say, the President of the United States. It happens, about 25 to 30% of the time, which is about twice as often, or actually, 25 to 30% of the time, which is compared to presidential vetoes, which are overridden maybe 1 or 2% of the time, it's very, very rare. In Nevada, it happens reasonably often. So, again, spot where the governor seems to be very powerful, but there is a significant check on that power within the legislature. The lieutenant governor, Kate Marshall, she's a Democrat, is the spare, right? It is the equivalent to the vice presidency in the state. Nevada's governor has been overwritten about 12% of the time. I was right the first time. But again, president about 1 to 2% of the time. So still about 10 times more often. Lieutenant governor. This is a role that was patterned after the vice president in the Constitution, so it's very similar powers. The lieutenant governor is allowed to preside over the Nevada State Senate, which they don't do very often, but they're allowed to, so whoop-de-frickin' do. And also allowed to break ties in the Nevada State Senate. However, it should be noted that unlike the federal Senate, the Nevada State Senate has an odd number of senators, so tie breaks are much, much, much less frequent in our fair silver state. So otherwise, the lieutenant governor has relatively limited power and is really, much like the vice president, kind of up to the whims of their governor as to how much they can actually accomplish and what programs it is that they're in charge of. The only really interesting thing, sorry about that, about the lieutenant governor role is this clause. The Constitution says that the lieutenant governor becomes acting governor in the case of the governor's death, disability, or absence from the state. Which, when the Constitution was written in 1864, if you were out of the state, you were probably very difficult to get a hold of. But, obviously, it is 2020, and if you're out of the state, there's a million different ways that we can get in contact. But that hasn't stopped some lieutenant governors from trying to, give themselves a little more power when the governor is out of state. Ugh, I'm sorry, I've got eyelashes stuck in my eyes. So this is partly enabled by the fact that, while we do have both a Democratic governor and lieutenant governor right now, that is not a necessity. The governor and lieutenant governor, unlike the president and vice president, are actually elected separately. So it happens that not all statewide offices are won by one party or the other. We've got that lone Republican still holding on at Secretary of State. And so it does happen sometimes that the lieutenant governor is a Democrat while the governor is a Republican, or vice versa. And accordingly, there can be some incentive for a lieutenant governor to try and flex their power a little when governors are out of the state for totally mundane, non-emergency reasons. So for example, there was a case in the 90s where you had a Republican governor, a Democratic lieutenant governor, and a case where the governor was at a conference in Los Angeles, which is notably not in the state of Nevada. And the lieutenant governor was like, okay, so while you're gone, it turns out there's a vacancy on the Clark County Commission, and I'm going to appoint somebody to fill that seat. That led to a lawsuit, and there was some similar shenanigans were tried the other way around, partisan-wise, when the governor was on vacation in the Caribbean, but he had a satellite phone, and you could call the guy. So the courts have since ruled that the absence from the state is only enforceable in a case where, one, the governor is not just like absent from the state, but is like out of contact, and two, there is some sort of need for gubernatorial decision making, right? So it's like, oh hey, there is a chemical spill. Should we declare a state of emergency? I can't get the governor on his cell phone. Lieutenant Governor Marshall, what do we do, right? But if the governor is just like, oh, he just went over to a conference in LA and he's got his phone and he's going to be back tomorrow, that doesn't count. The courts have said. So, attorneys general. We have an attorney general. His name is Aaron Ford. He is a Democrat. The attorney general is a role with relatively limited executive power. The attorney general doesn't really have like the direct authority over law enforcement organs that the federal attorney general does, like the FBI. Primary duty of the attorney general is to oversee the county attorneys general and state prosecutors and things like that. Make sure they're all doing their job properly, and to defend the state in court against lawsuits, which are reasonably frequent. This is also different from the federal government in that in the federal government we have a position called the Solicitor General that it's their job to defend the federal government from lawsuits, and that's separate from the Attorney General. It should also be noted that you don't actually technically under the Constitution have to be an attorney to be the Attorney General, but we've never had one that hasn't been, so kind of always is. It should also be noted that attorneys general in the state of Nevada have recently used this position to try and drum up a little publicity for themselves and to lob a few shots in the ongoing culture wars. So Republican Attorney General Adam Laxalt, name you should remember from the 2016 elections, 2018 elections. He was running for governor against Sisolak. He signed the state of Nevada onto amicus briefs opposing Obamacare, right? And similarly, Aaron Ford has signed the state of Nevada onto briefs opposing price gouging during the coronavirus epidemic, right? So it can be a position where legal influence can gain somebody a little bit of a personal spotlight, but for the most part, it's a position with limited executive power and lots of time in the courtroom. Third, we have Secretary of State Barbara Cegavske, and she is the lone Republican currently in elected office in the state of Nevada. In statewide elected office. There are plenty of Republicans, not plenty, but there are Republicans in the legislature. And we do have one Republican holding on at the federal level as well. That would be, of course, Reno Congressman Mark Amodei. Barbara Cegavske is the only statewide elected Republican. She's the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State has 3 official duties in the Constitution: to oversee elections, to register businesses, and to maintain the legislative record. Now, I will go to the Secretary of State's website. nvsos.gov.sos.nv.gov. But so, here's Secretary of State. You can see that search businesses, business services, business forums. Of those 3 duties, which of them does she take most seriously? It should be noted that they're also the folks behind the voter registration, the statewide online voter registration, which is register2votenv.gov, which will take you to this page. So, good thing to know. There we go. We have a controller and we have a treasurer. That is unusual. Most states have a combined controller-treasurer. But in Nevada, the treasurer handles the actual disbursement of the money. The controller keeps the books. Many folks suggest the offices should be combined. There were two initiatives in 1995 and 1999 that both attempted to combine the two offices into one, like most states have. And in both cases, those ballot initiatives went down at the ballot box. So for whatever reason right now, the citizens of Nevada want a separate controller and a separate treasurer, and those are Catherine Byrne and Zach Koenig, respectively. They're both Democrats. Any questions on the executive branch? Alright, let's talk about the judiciary. This is one of those places where, as I mentioned, it's a little harder to just use the federal government as kind of a copy-paste. We do have, in the state of Nevada, we have a Supreme Court, we have an appellate court, and we have various trial courts. However, unlike the federal system, cases do not proceed through them in quite as orderly a fashion. So we'll look at that as we get to the end of this section. So, Supreme Court of the state of Nevada. Highest court in the state, the one that decides what the Constitution means in the state of Nevada. There we go. I'm going to see how that angle works. That's a little better. Anyway, so there are 7 elected justices on that Supreme Court who do serve 6-year rotating terms. There's usually 1 or 2 of them on the ballot during every general election. If you want to sit on the Nevada Supreme Court, you do have to be at least 25 years of age, and you must have been an attorney for 15 years. So, if you were admitted to the bar at age 10, you can be a Nevada Supreme Court justice at age 25. The reason for the discrepancy there is that the age requirement for must be 25 is in the Constitution, but at the time, formal law credentials were actually relatively rare in Nevada. And this is the 1860s, and so they didn't actually always require judges be lawyers back in those days. And as we're going to see, we don't actually always require it today, believe it or not. But anyway, you also have to have been 2 years a resident in Nevada before you can serve on the Supreme Court. As I said, they do serve 6-year terms. This is important. The Nevada Supreme Court is the primary avenue for appeals in the state. If you lose the trial court, you appeal straight to the Supreme Court. Whether your case gets heard in the Supreme Court or not, we'll talk about in a little bit here. But we were formerly one of 10 states that did not have a separate appellate court. Nowadays we do, but that's a relatively new phenomenon, actually. It should be mentioned that the Supreme Court of the United States is a very prestigious job, and the justices are looked at with a lot of reverence. That's not quite as true for the Nevada Supreme Court. the court is held in somewhat lower regard by the legal profession in the state of Nevada. So the Supreme Court is somewhat lower in prestige than in other places, partly because political corruption is as Nevadan as slot machines at the grocery store, and so the judges haven't always been fair and impartial, let's be honest. So normally the Supreme Court of Nevada does sit in 2 3-judge panels, one of them in Vegas, one of them in Reno. Surprise, surprise. And the Chief Justice, I don't know exactly where they sit, but Chief Justice assigns cases to those panels as they come in. It's relatively rare to hear of a full en banc hearing, meaning the whole Supreme Court altogether, but it does happen in particularly important cases. So we also have district courts. The district courts are kind of the workhorses of the courts in the state of Nevada. We have 10 Nevada judicial districts. I swear I'm not messing up. My keyboard's been kind of finicky. Excuse me, 11 judicial districts. Got another one? But you're not going to tell me where they are. There we go. Here are the judicial districts in the state of Nevada. You can see that we are here in Las Vegas in the 8th judicial district, that no district breaks county lines. Some of them include multiple counties, like District 5, which includes both Nye and tiny Esmeralda County, or 7, which includes Eureka, White Pine, and Lincoln counties. But none of them break county lines. None of it. There's no county that lies in 2 districts. There are districts that have 2 counties, but not the other way around. You can see, much like the district lines from the U.S. Circuit Courts, that there are a whole bunch of them up here in Reno, and like just one big one down here in Las Vegas. Why? Because, well, there was nobody in Reno there's nobody in Vegas, and quite a few people up in Carson City and Reno, relatively. So they got more judicial districts. So there's 11 judicial districts. Of those districts, the overwhelming majority of them have either 1 or 2 judges. So one district has 1 judge, and 7 of them have 2. Can't remember which district has just the 1 judge, but one of them just has 1 judge. Several have 2. And then there's the 2nd district, which is Reno, Washoe County. That district has 15 judges, which is, by the way, more than the rest of Nevada combined, or actually the same as the rest of Nevada combined. And then there's the 8th judicial district down here in Clark County, where we have a whopping 52 district court judges, who, by the way, are all on your ballots. Anyone get their mail-in ballots for the primary election yet? Because we are doing an all-mail election for Nevada right now, and we are having primaries for, among other offices, district court judges. Tippy, can you get out of the shot? Come on, buddy. Let's snuggle. Good boy. So you may very well have a list of a whole bunch of people hoping to be district court judges sitting in your house somewhere. I will, by the way, mention that it is very, very hard to find information on judicial offices. I'm still working with some of my personal contacts to try and figure out a list of who I want to vote for. But if you are feeling, awesome. If you are feeling a little confused and daunted by the endless list of judges on this thing, then do not worry. You are not alone. Even relatively politically savvy people like myself have trouble figuring out just exactly who to vote for. Also, has anyone else gotten like 4 other people's ballots? Because, yeah, definitely did that. Anyway, so district courts. These are the district courts. All of the judges are elected. They're all elected for 6-year terms, and they're all elected at the same time, as we saw on our ballots. If you do want to be on a Nevada district court, you do have to be 25 years of age, much like the Supreme Court. You also have to have been a lawyer for 10 years. So again, hey, if you were admitted to the bar at 15, you can be on the district court at 25. Obviously, that's very rare. You also need to be a resident of Nevada for 2 years. So what do the district courts do? So these are our trial courts. Much like the federal district courts, these are our trial courts for most major cases. District courts have original jurisdiction over cases involving gross misdemeanors and felonies, and any civil suit in excess of $10,000. Any appeals of agency decisions, so if, the Nevada Department of Fish and Wildlife didn't grant you your hunting license, you can appeal it to the district court. Also, any other cases that are not explicitly assigned elsewhere. So the district courts have, as I said, what's called original jurisdiction, meaning they're the first place you go for those types of cases. It should also be noted that the district courts do serve an appellate role for some cases. So we're going to talk about the municipal and justice courts in just a little bit. They mostly handle traffic tickets. But if you want to appeal a case out of the municipal and justice courts, you appeal that case up to the district court rather than from there going into the Supreme Court. And we'll talk about the way cases flow through the system in just a little bit. So the district courts are the state's primary trial court. They're also, by the way, the state's primary family courts. So if you are involved in divorce, adoption, name changes, things like that, all of that would go through the district court for wherever it is, whatever county it is that you live in. I have a divorce decree from a Nevada district court sitting around here somewhere. From the 8th District Court in Clark County, from their family court division. Oh, did I mention the family court division? I should mention the family court division. In the larger counties in Washoe and Clark, the courts actually have a separate division just to handle family court cases. So to handle, again, divorces, adoptions, name changes, emancipations, other family matters. So of those 52 judges in Nevada, or in Clark County, something like 12 of them sit on family court departments that specifically handle that kind of stuff, right? Judiciary. Courts of limited jurisdiction. So this is the municipal and the justice courts. So oftentimes, so basically these courts do essentially the same thing. They are separated in terms of whether or not they handle cases that originated within or outside of city limits. So we're going to talk about cities here in a little bit. But basically, if you get a speeding ticket, on the 95 between about Centennial Hills and say Sahara on the east side, that will be in the city of Las Vegas. That would mean that you would go to Las Vegas Municipal Court. If you get that speeding ticket on, say, the 15 near the Strip, That's unincorporated Clark County, so that would go to the Las Vegas Township Justice Court. Now the difference is pretty minimal for most people. You're going to have a similar hearing. It's, in fact, I'm pretty sure that, I know that in Henderson they're in the same building. I'm pretty sure in Las Vegas they're also in the same building. I never went actually down to the court to handle my traffic ticket. I had a friend who was an attorney who was very, very nice and took care of it for me, because it took her like 15 minutes and would have taken me like 5 hours. So really, really thankful for that. But bulk of the workload of these cases is traffic citations. Other things that might show up, small claims, so small lawsuits, stuff under $10,000, or code violations, maybe some petty misdemeanors like vagrancy and stuff like that. Limited jurisdiction, small cases. But the reason that we have these courts is so that it gets the small cases out of the way so that the big cases can be handled by, again, in some counties, the 1 or 2 district court judges that they have. So for the justices, actually, let me look at townships really quickly. We have townships in Nevada. And townships do like 2 things. There, Clark County townships. That's perfect. In the Nevada system of government, townships basically do 2 things. So we have the Township of Las Vegas, which is most of what people think of as Las Vegas. We have the Township of Henderson. We have the Township of Nelson Boulder. The Township of Good Springs, where apparently my mother had to go pay a traffic ticket once. Apparently she had to go stop at the tiny little courthouse on the edge of, on Jean, on the edge of the state. So all these are townships, and each of these townships has its own justice court. They also have a constable, who's apparently the person who shows up to like evict you or serve you with court documents. That's an elected position. But yeah, so all of these are different justice courts. So if you want to be a justice of the peace in Nevada, you serve a 6-year term. They are staggered though, so we don't elect them all at the same time. Duh. You do have to have at least a high school diploma before all of you start running out to go file to be judges in Las Vegas. In Washoe and Clark counties, you do need to be a lawyer for 5 years. But if you wanted to be a justice of peace in some of the rural parts of Nevada, you actually don't need anything more than a high school diploma. And of course, to get elected, it is an elected position. So cities set their own qualifications for justice of the peace. Some cities elect them, some appoint them. In Boulder City, they appoint them. In the other 3 cities here in the valley, they elect them. So if they're elected, they serve 4-year terms. If they're appointed, then the city council can basically do whatever the hell they want. Cities set their own qualifications for judges, so they differ from place to place, but in most major areas, you still see that requirement that you at least be an attorney. Finally, the Court of Appeals. I saved it for last because it's the most recently created part of Nevada's judiciary. It was only created in 2014. So it's only about 6 years old. The Court of Appeals was created as an attempt to clear the Supreme Court backlog, because guess what? If your Supreme Court is the only avenue for appeals in your state, a lot of cases start going to the Supreme Court. And for a while there, it was a 2-year wait from the time you filed your case to when you got a letter back scheduling your hearing. Not until the case was heard, just until the case was put on a calendar. So obviously that was untenable, and there was an attempt to try and correct that. So the Court of Appeals handles a specific type of case, what legal scholars call correction cases, which are cases where the Supreme Court has already decided a similar case in the past, and the district court just applied the law improperly, right? Who didn't apply that precedent properly. So this is where we talk about how cases flow through the Nevada judiciary. That's my Nevada judiciary flowchart. I'm pretty sure I have that as a PDF on the Canvas site. If I don't, I will check and make sure that goes up there for you. But here's how cases flow through the Nevada judiciary. You can see minor cases down here. Start with, sorry, I realize my head is in the way. Minor cases down here start in the municipal or the justice courts, depending on whether it was a city or an unincorporated part of the county that they occurred in. From there, if you appeal those cases, or if you have a major case, that all goes to the district courts. Here's where it gets weird. The Supreme Court is still the primary avenue of appeals in Nevada. If you lose the district court and you want to appeal your case, you appeal it to the Supreme Court. And then the Supreme Court decides whether the Supreme Court is going to hear the case or whether they're going to kick it down to the Court of Appeals. So it goes up there, and the Chief Justice will either take the case or assign it to the Court of Appeals, depending on whether they think it's a case with a new issue or whether they think it's one of those correction cases. Right? So accordingly, you can see how this differs from that very simple, like, 3-step flowchart that we saw in the slides prepared by the publishers. It's a little more complicated than the federal judiciary. We've got 4 different levels of courts, and we've got this kind of weird U-turn that you've got to do through the Supreme Court at the top if you want to get to the Court of Appeals. It's strange. It's kind of wonky, but that's how the judiciary has been set up over the years. So it's still a pretty new court. Whether it is successful at clearing the backlog and making the state of Nevada a more efficient place to do legal business in, it still kind of remains to be seen, because it's only been around for 6 years. I'm going to very briefly go fill my water bottle, and then we'll jump back in on local government. Be right back. Let's talk about local government. Woot woot! Clark, Lincoln, Nye, Esmeralda, Mineral, Lyon, Douglas, Carson, Story, Churchill, Lander, Eureka, White Pine, Elko, Humboldt, Pershing, and Washoe are the 17 counties of the state of Nevada. Be happy you only got 17. California has 49. So we do have 17 counties here in Nevada. Every part of Nevada is assigned to one county or another. There is no bit of Nevada that is part of 2 counties, nor a bit of Nevada that is part of 0 counties. It is 1 county and only 1 county. It should be noted that we do have one consolidated city-county, which is the city and county of Carson. This is an arrangement that happens in a few places, most notably San Francisco and Philadelphia, where the city and the county have kind of merged into one big agglomerative government. So there's a 5-member county commission in Carson County, which is the 4 city council members plus the mayor of Carson City. They make up the county commission. So things are a little wonky in Carson City is what I'm saying. The city and the county are smushed together. But for most places, we have the county as the primary unit of local government. The state is not allowed to discriminate between counties by name. So the state is not allowed to say, for example, that you have to smog your car in Clark and Washoe counties, but you don't have to do it anywhere else. Which is, and you may be saying, wait, Allie, that's actually what the state says. But actually what the state says is that in counties with populations greater than 100,000, you have to smog your car. So there are only 2 counties in the entire state that have populations greater than 100,000. It's Washoe and Clark. Washoe's got about 500,000. Clark has 2.5. So they can very easily make a law that only applies to Clark County by saying, citizens in counties with over 1 million people, have to pay this special tax or something like that. And we do. We have to pay extra in our car registration and so on and so forth. I explained to my California friends back home that, living in Nevada is, if you're in Clark and Washoe counties, legally the regulations and things like that are very similar to California. And if you go over the border into Nye County or Lincoln County, then all of a sudden it's Mad Max. So the counties are headed by elected county commissions, which have somewhere between 3 and 7 members. Clark has 7. Washoe County and Carson City County have 5. Everywhere else has 3. So county commissions have no separation of powers. They are both the executive and the legislature of the counties that they serve. But they also have relatively limited powers. They can only do what the state allows them to do. Remember that we don't have federalism at the state level. The federal government and the state government both have their own independent sources of power, but counties and cities are a creature of the state government. They're not independent in the same way that the states are of DC. And hey, it's beautiful out there, but I've also seen some very scary things driving the highways up in Lincoln County. It's like, that car should not be on this road. So counties primarily handle a list of state delegated powers that include law enforcement, public safety and health, vital records, family law, property assessment and recording, planning and zoning, things like that. Also, the county commission's power is tempered because there are a number of department heads within the county that are elected. Let me pop back over to here, and we'll head on down to the county office. Clark County elected officials, where are you? Oh yeah, here's your Clark County Commission. Justin Jones, the Red Rock guy, is my county commissioner. Right. Here we go. So the district attorney, very powerful person within the county, elected, right? This guy is Steve Wolfson, and he's basically in the casino's back pocket. County assessor, so again, that carrying out of that, recording properties and assessing tax on them, that's an elected position. County clerk, so registering and recording births and marriages and things like that. County recorder, those are elected positions. County treasurer, elected. Public administrator is actually who takes care of your stuff if you die without a will and no family. also elected. Um, One big one that I see missing here that's especially important, I don't know where it is sheriff. County sheriffs are elected. So our county sheriff is elected, right? And so that limits the power of these county commissions because they can't appoint whoever they want for those positions. They have to abide by the will of the voters. Well, what if voters in a particular area really don't like the way that the county is running things? They'd like to set up their own laws, like to have their own form of city government, their own city council, their own mayor, all that good stuff. Well, in that case, those voters can get together and go through a process called incorporation. Incorporation it's a petitioning process where people go around and gather signatures from their neighbors, and there's a certain number of signatures you have to get in a specified area, and if you get enough signatures and they put it on the ballot and people vote, do we want to become a city? And if they want to become a city, then a city is formed and they get to have their own little separate city government. We have 19 of those in the state of Nevada. The largest, of course, is Las Vegas. The second largest... See, this joke does not work as well online. Because normally what I do here is I ask everybody, okay, and so the second largest city in Nevada is... And everybody says Reno. And that's like, okay, so that's the second largest metro area, but the second largest incorporated city is actually Henderson. So Las Vegas is the largest, Henderson is the second largest, and then it's Reno. So 19 incorporated cities. The smallest is a little over 1,000 people in the tiny city of Caliente, Nevada, which is actually a really charming little spot. They have a little railroad museum there. It's very cute. There's a gorgeous state park just down the road. It's up in Lincoln County. Where was I going? Oh, I was going to Google Maps. So, one of the wrinkles about living in Las Vegas is that most of what people think of as Las Vegas is not actually in Las Vegas. The city of Las Vegas, the city of which, Carolyn Goodman is mayor, and hopefully not much longer, where the Las Vegas City Council has any sort of say-so. The city of Las Vegas is these boundaries right here. It's one of 4 incorporated cities in the valley. But you'll notice that, so here's Las Vegas. There's a separate city of North Las Vegas, which has its own city council, its own mayor, its own city hall, its own, all that good stuff. It's a totally separate city. It's not just the north side of Las Vegas, it is the city of North Las Vegas. Which is a thing that happens relatively often, so people often have that same confusion with the city of South San Francisco, which is the same kind of deal. We have the city of Henderson. Kind of hard to see there, but yeah, there's Henderson. And then we have tiny little Boulder City. Tiny little, holy hell. Yeah, actually, it turns out Boulder City has added a whole bunch of territory out here that's undeveloped to its incorporated area because they're expecting all of this is going to eventually be filled in. But there's Boulder City. You can actually see, like, this is Boulder City, not Boulder City, not Boulder City, not Boulder City, Boulder City, not Boulder City, not Boulder City, not Boulder City, right? Yeah, so if you live in Enterprise, which is somewhere out here-ish, Enterprise is oh, there's Enterprise, way in the hell down there. Enterprise is unincorporated territory. There is no city down there. You don't have a mayor. You don't have a city council. That territory is controlled directly by County of Clark. So if you live in Enterprise or Spring Valley or Paradise or Whitney, all Winchester, all these places are unincorporated. Summerlin, most of Summerlin is actually in the city of Las Vegas, but we're also kind of funny on what we call Summerlin. So, also, I have a plea that I give out to my students every year, and nobody has ever had an answer for me, but does anyone know why the city of Las Vegas looks like Swiss cheese? Because I've never lived anywhere where you had, here are the city limits, and then there are these little enclaves every so often. So it's like, this is Las Vegas, this is not Las Vegas, this is Las Vegas again, and then this is not Las Vegas again. Like, you can be driving down, oh, where was it? There's a spot on Cheyenne where you can go from Las Vegas to, oh, here it is. If you drive down Alexander Road here, you'll go into Las Vegas, out of Las Vegas, into Las Vegas, out of Las Vegas, back into Las Vegas, back out of Las Vegas, or excuse me, out of Las Vegas, into Las Vegas, out of Las Vegas, into Las Vegas, out of Las Vegas, back into Las Vegas again. And then if you turn left down the street, you'll go out and then in and then out and then in again. I don't understand how people manage to do that, how they manage to exclude like their little neighborhoods from the city and what the story is behind that. But if somebody can tell me the story there, like, I'm sure it has something to do with taxes and maybe the mob, and I mean, it's Las Vegas, so it has something to do with the mob. But yeah, so Summerlin, Spring Valley, Green Valley, most of these places are what's known as census designated places, which are just, it applies to names of neighborhoods, names of unincorporated towns, and things like that. Some of these places, like Paradise, for example, has its own town council, which is kind of like a city council, but it's non-binding. It's an advisory board rather than being a full-on city government. Summerlin is actually a neighborhood of Las Vegas, so it's actually often very hard to tell what any individual geographic entity is here in the valley without really looking at the boundaries. You can see that if you're up in Centennial Hills, a lot of that's Vegas, but a lot of it's not, right? So we kind of call this whole area Centennial Hills, and so is that a neighborhood of Las Vegas, even though half of it's not in Las Vegas? Geography is messy. But at least personally, I live rather, a good 2 miles within the city limits of Las Vegas. Sahara is in most places the southern boundary. But if you look on the strip, you can see that actually the only property that is on the strip is a Stratosphere. That's the only one that's actually in Las Vegas. The rest of them are out of Las Vegas. And I can tell you why that is. It's because back in the late 40s and early 50s, the city of Las Vegas was under a lot of pressure from the federal government to crack down on the mafia in gambling. And so a city attorney in the city of Las Vegas was really starting to crack down on it. And so the mob packed up and moved all their casinos down to Paradise. And then they created the Paradise Town Council in order to prevent the city of Las Vegas from annexing them, because if you have a town board, you can't be annexed unless the town board consents. So that was quite literally the mob, right? That's why the strip is not in Las Vegas. Yeah, as to how people manage to get their little cul-de-sacs exempted like that, like, I mean, I know why they did it, but how? What's the story behind that? I don't know. So city councils are stronger than county boards, mostly because they don't have all of those elected officials, right? Most city officials are appointed. With a big but. See, for the most part, cities can have their own police departments, hire and fire the police chiefs at will. So City of North Las Vegas, they have North Las Vegas PD. They have their own police chief. They can hire and fire them. Same with Henderson, same with Boulder City. Las Vegas, though, the Las Vegas Police Department merged with the Clark County Sheriff's Department to form what we affectionately know as Metro, the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. So city councils tend to be more powerful, but in one major way, particularly the city of Las Vegas is hamstrung because this guy, Joe Lombardo here, is technically the chief of police of the city of Las Vegas, but he is elected, so the city council can't fire him if they want. Special versus general charter. Really quickly, basically, there are two ways of forming a city. There's one that's called a general charter, which is basically like, Mad Libs for your city government. There's a form that you fill out, and then you turn that in. And as long as you have the votes, the state legislature is guaranteed to approve your petition if you use that particular form that they provide. You can also get a special charter where you write your own charter and then you submit it to the legislature and they tell you whether or not they like it. So we do actually have more special charter cities than general charter cities. We have 11 special and 8 general. The general charter cities tend to be smaller. So cities like Las Vegas and Reno and Henderson pretty much came up with their own systems of government, but places like Caliente, Caliente is a general charter city. They're just, whatever the state is good with, we're good with, right? One other thing that we should talk about when we're talking about Nevada and local government is special districts. Special districts, the most powerful ones are school districts. We do have 17 school districts in the state of Nevada, which is at some point somebody decided that we'd have one school district per county. So we're the 30th largest city in the country, but we have the 5th largest school district because Clark County Schools is the entire county. Where I came from, we had 400,000 people in the city in 2 different school districts that serve that city. But something that people don't realize about school districts and water districts and television repair districts and et cetera, is that they are separate forms of government. So Clark County Schools actually has nothing to do with the Clark County Commission, right? The government of Clark County. They are a separate government entity that happens to share the same borders and boundaries as Clark County, but has its own elected board, the Clark County School Board Trustees. It has its own power to tax, mostly through property taxes. It even has its own police force, right? There's a Clark County School District PD that is separate from Metro. They have their own police. So it's a separate government entity. Most of the time, these special district boards are elected, but first of all, they are way down the ballot. School boards people pay attention to. For a lot of these others, I remember I used to vote for who was going to be my Metropolitan Water District Commissioner, and I was like, I don't know who these people are. I don't know who the Metropolitan Water District Commission, that's back in California, that's the LA Metropolitan Water District, but it's like, I don't know who. Speaking of water district commissioners, sometimes boards will just be composed of elected officials from other offices. So like the Las Vegas Valley Water District is the Clark County Commission. So the Clark County Commission is also the Las Vegas Valley Water District Board. So sometimes that'll happen. So generally somebody is elected at some point, but they're not necessarily elected to that office. Let me take a look at the slides that we got left. Yes, we got like a bunch of slides left. So I'm going to go ahead and call this lecture here. We'll have one more lecture on Thursday morning, and that will be the extent of the course. I do want to give a quick shout out and mention that faculty evaluations are now available through Canvas. And if you'd like to go ahead and give me an evaluation, preferably a nice one, that would really, really help, because that is how um, other universities determine whether or not I'm a good teacher and whether or not they want to hire me. It's also how CSN determines whether or not they're going to hire me full time. So, if you think I'm good at this stuff, please go ahead and leave a comment and tell the computer that I'm good at this stuff. And if you think I'm bad at this stuff, then lie. um, so please, 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 though, go ahead and do your faculty evaluations. I do look at them. It does help me become a better teacher. And the higher response that I get, the more accurate a picture of my teaching that I get, and the better I can improve. So please go on Canvas, spend some time, do the faculty evals. Papers should have been turned in on Friday. If you did have some sort of reason that you weren't able to do that, contact me, and we'll maybe be able to work something out. And I'm going to try and have the extra credit quiz after the lecture on Thursday, Kimberly. And let's see, anything else I have to say? Essay should be in. I'm going to be looking at essays this week. I'm going to be looking at quiz 2 scores this week. If you were one of the 4 people that showed up for the absolutely botched attempt at an online quiz for quiz 2, then I will be getting your extra credit in at some point. And yeah, beyond that, please try and tune in Thursday morning, because we will have an extra credit quiz. Please try and have 2 screens if you can, one to watch and one to answer, because Kahoot works better with 2 screens. And I will see you all on Thursday morning for one last lecture. Stay safe, stay home, wear a mask if you gotta go outside, and we'll all get through this. I will see you on Thursday.